So in this video, I want to talk about 5 things that you should do after you buy a home here in the Treasure Valley. Number 1, you should inspect your crawl space at least 1 time per year. So there's a few things you want to look out for in your crawl space when you do your yearly check. Number 1, you want to look for fallen insulation bats. Now this is a super easy fix. What'll happen is sometimes your insulation will fall down. And so you just literally push it back up between the joists. Sometimes this wire will come loose. That's the wire that holds it up between the 2 eye joists. You just push it back up. Be sure you have gloves. If you're doing a lot of insulation work, you're probably gonna wanna have a mask on because there's fiberglass fibers that fly around and gets in your lungs. And you don't want it on your hands as well. They'll make your hands itch. Second thing you wanna check for in your crawl space is to make sure that all of the ducts are properly connected. Now this was actually a problem that I found in my house last summer. My air conditioner was running until like 2 in the morning continuously and my house wasn't cooling down. I couldn't figure out what was going on. So I opened up the hatch for the crawl space and I realized the crawl space was cool. So I realized the duct had actually come apart, and so the cool air that was running through the ducts was actually just blowing into the crawl space. So it was a really super easy fix. You get one of these really long zip ties. You put a little bit of that aluminum tape on it and just connects it back together. So you want to make sure that those are properly connected, and you also want to make sure that they are properly fixed to the subfloor above. Sometimes this will come undone and they'll fall down and they'll just be resting on your crawl space. You want to make sure that they're hanging above the bottom of the crawl space. Another important thing to check for as you're strolling around in your crawl space is you want to look for signs of water intrusion, either leaks or water that's coming from the outside into your crawl space. And what I usually do is I just quickly glance at the fixtures, run your hand real quickly along either the PEX or the polybutylene or whatever kind of fixtures you have here to make sure that there's nothing, it doesn't feel wet, so you don't have any actual leaks that are coming into your crawl space. There's a good chance that if you have a leak, you won't actually see it right away. So another thing to do is just look on your visqueen here, your vapor barrier, to make sure that you don't see signs of water. So if you have standing water there, obviously then there's something that's leaking, or if there was water there and then eventually evaporated, it'll usually leave some sort of a mark and you'll see like a dried up puddle. So just be looking around for evidence of water. You don't want there to be water in your crawl space. And the other thing you want to look for as you're crawling around in your crawl space is mold. So usually what I do is I just glance at exposed wood, so your joists or your stem walls. Make sure that there's no mold growing on that wood. That's usually where it appears. Now mold can come in several different colors. It can either look dark, sort of black or dark blue and have spots, or it can look white, more like cotton candy and more fluffy. So just be looking to make sure that there's nothing that's growing on the exposed wood. And another important component to your crawl space is this black vapor barrier, this visqueen plastic barrier right here. And what that does is it keeps the moisture that comes up from the earth below this plastic covering, below this barrier, so that you don't get moisture in your crawl space. So if you're crawling around and you see that there is large sections of this vapor barrier that are missing, you're gonna wanna deal with that right away, because moisture is the main reason why you're gonna get mold in your crawl space. If there's moisture in your crawl space and you don't get air circulation, there's a good chance you're gonna get mold. Number 2, you also should be inspecting your attic on a yearly basis. And before I jump into the attic, just this week, I wrote a helpful resource on the actual costs of buying a home here in the Treasure Valley. I think a lot of people don't have an accurate understanding of how much it costs before you buy a house, while you buy a house, and then after you buy a house. So I compiled all of that together. I also put an actual closing statement from a recent transaction so that you can see the actual numbers from our area. If you're thinking of moving, I would definitely recommend reading it so that you can be thinking about what to expect. Just click on the link below. So 2 quick tips here in the attic. Number 1, make sure that you're walking on the trusses and not on the drywall, or you'll fall through into your house below. So the drywall is gonna be where you see the insulation. And then the second tip kind of sounds counterintuitive to what I'm telling you, but you don't really want to be walking around here too much, actually. Your insulation is actually just blown in and you want it to be real fluffy. So the more you walk on it, the more it gets packed down and the less effective it becomes. So there's a few things that I'm looking for in my attic. And by the way, this doesn't have to be a long check. It's like 5 minutes, 10 minutes tops. First thing that I check for is proper ventilation. Now you need a lot of ventilation in your attic. So what I'll usually do is I'll just glance up at the vents in my roof. So you can see one behind me there. And just to make sure there's nothing obstructing the airflow. Now, one problem that can arise in an attic is sometimes the builders don't install what are called the styrofoam baffles properly. And what that is you need air to come in from the eave of your roof outside through these vents called soffits. Comes through the insulation and it needs to go into your attic and then out the vents. Sometimes when that insulation is blocking those baffles, you don't get proper circulation, and that's what can cause mold. So the second thing that I check for is to make sure that the vent sleeves are properly connected to the vents that blow the air out of your roof. So you can see it behind me there. Now that actually is connected to my bathroom fan below. The bathroom fan sucks that moist air through that sleeve and then it blows it out of the roof. Now sometimes builders don't install a sleeve, it's incorrect. And so you got moist air that's actually just blowing into your attic. That's bad. You want to make sure that that doesn't happen. But then sometimes that sleeve back there just gets disconnected from the where it meets up with the vent near the roof. So you just want to make sure that it's properly attached so that you don't have any moist air blowing into your attic. Next, you want to make sure that there's no mold growing anywhere in your attic. So like in your crawl space, check the exposed wood to make sure that there's no microbials growing on your trusses or on your roof deck. And then finally, you want to check to make sure that there's no leaks in your attic. Now, there's a 99% chance that you're not going to come up here when it's pouring rain outside. So you're not going to see any water in your attic. So what I do is I just look at my wood deck or my roof deck or my trusses to look for signs of water intrusion. So if the wood is swollen or if it's discolored like grayish, then that's a sign that you might have a leak. I also look at my insulation to see if there's signs of water that has been dropping and it pushes the insulation down. Now, before I move on, let me just candidly say that I do work hard to try and make my channel stand out from other real estate channels. I don't want to just say some canned line or try and sell you something. I really do try to add value and give you content that I think is useful. And so if you think that I do that, I would really appreciate it if you would hit the like button. It actually helps my channel to grow as well. Number 3, you should adjust your sprinklers so they're not spraying your house. And you should ensure that you're not over watering. Now, this is an easy one, but for some reason, most people are just too lazy to do it. Now, unfortunately, it's winter right now, so I can't show you how to adjust the sprinklers, but just YouTube it. You'll find how to do it. It's real easy to do. Usually you need just like a little key like this to adjust the sprinklers, or you might need a screwdriver. But there's 2 things that I want to say about sprinklers. Number 1, water on your house is bad. So I'm at the corner of my house here and I had to adjust my sprinklers so that they don't actually touch my house. Now, siding is intended to protect your house from water intrusion, but it's not intended to just have a 24/7 continuous flow of water on your house. So if you have your sprinklers that are just continuously spraying water on your house, eventually that's going to seep through your siding. Now, I have vinyl siding, and honestly, that's pretty good siding because it's actually just made out of plastic. Most of the homes here in Idaho, though, have treated wood siding. And so, same thing, if you have water that is continuously sprayed onto your house, eventually that water is going to seep through that treated wood. That siding will swell and eventually you'll get some dry rot. So you want to make sure that your sprinklers are adjusted and that it's not spraying continuously on your siding. And then the second point to remember is that too much water towards your house is bad also. It might not be touching your house, but if it's pooling near your foundation, that can be bad because the water can then seep down along the edge of your foundation and get into your crawl space. And as a quick bonus, since we're talking about siding, you want to make sure that you pull your barbecue away from your siding. If you can get it in the picture there. I see a lot of houses that have their siding that is swollen because the barbecue is pushed up against the house and it gets too hot and eventually damages the siding. Another thing you should do after you buy a house is you should clean out your gutters and you should install some downspouts if you don't have any. Now, I was just showing a house last week where the downspouts emptied into one of those drip pans, but the drip pan was tilted backwards, so all the water was flowing backward toward the foundation of the house. The whole point of a downspout is to get the water away from the house so it doesn't flow into your crawl space. Think about how all of the surface area on your roof gets drained into the gutter, and then all of the water from the gutter comes out at one point, or maybe 2 points on both sides of the house. So you have a lot of water coming in one particular spot, and so you want to make sure that that water is coming as far away from your house as possible. And so related to that, once you have the downspouts installed, you want to make sure that you check them every year to make sure they're not clogged. Finally, you should have your furnace and air conditioner serviced yearly. Now, honestly, I feel like this one is a little bit annoying because I'm the kind of a guy that doesn't really like to spend $130 or so on servicing. But the truth is, it's actually really important to get it serviced every year. I mean, your HVAC system is a $10,000 system, so you want to make sure that it's running properly and that there's no problems with it because you want it to last as long as possible. A couple years ago, I had a guy service, when he came out to service my unit, he found that the heater exchange was cracked, and so carbon monoxide was actually seeping into my ductwork and eventually into my house. So that's really dangerous, so I ended up having to replace my system. So it's really important that you have your HVAC system serviced every year. Now, every 3 months, you also have to replace your air filter. Now, this is a little bit annoying as well because they're not super cheap. I buy mine on Amazon. I think I get 4 of them for 48 bucks. So for about 50 bucks a year or so is what it costs me to replace these filters. Now, it's actually really important to replace these frequently and regularly because if they get clogged with a lot of dust, then that's going to put a lot of extra strain on your HVAC system because it's going to have to work a lot harder to pull that air through your filters. And that can eventually reduce the lifespan of your HVAC system. Thanks for watching. As always, if you have any questions about real estate, please reach out to me. See you next time.